Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Here's what I know. At the moment, our older teens in particular are missing out on all of the significant life events that they would typically be involved in.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Mrs. Happy Families, we have got 2 days. 2 days until the school holidays arrive on the eastern seaboard. All of Queensland, New South Wales, the ACT, Victoria on school holidays starting tomorrow afternoon. Are you excited for it?
I might just be getting a little bit excited.
Okay.
I have been waiting to see what our government is going to do, but I think we actually might make it to the holidays unscathed.
This might be the first time in what feels like more than a year.
Touch wood.
I know.
Let's not talk about this.
Since, well, hopefully there won't be a lockdown. Hopefully Brisbane and Queensland are going to escape. For those of you who are in New South Wales, the ACT, Victoria and New Zealand, school holidays probably not quite what you were hoping because lockdowns continue. But we are Justin and Kylie Coulson, the founders of happyfamilies.com.au, parents to 6 children. I'm the author of 6 books about raising happy families, and this is the Happy Families podcast. Kylie, every month or so, you allow me to geek out, get a little bit excited, dive into the latest research from all around the world to look at what's happening in families and what we can take from science, implement in our homes to make our families flourish. And today is the day.
You're saying that like I have a choice.
Oh, that was my wicked laugh. So let's get into it. We've got 3 studies. Should I do the wicked witch laugh?
Go for it.
Okay, the kids love this one. You ready? Okay, I'm back. Let's do this.
Do Donald Duck.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, come on, do it.
We're about to get academic and sciencey, and you want me to do Donald Duck?
Come on.
Why do you want me to do Donald Duck?
Just do it.
Oh boy, do I have to?
Did you like that? The kids are into me all the time.
Do Donald Duck. Oh boy, that's so wonderful.
All right, that is, I don't know where that came from, and I'm not sure.
Donald Duck, Doctor, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Donald? No.
There you go.
All right, so let's talk science because I need to recover from what you've just put me through.
Oh, look, there had to be something in it for me.
If that did it for you, you are very easily pleased. Let's have a look at the latest science. So we're going to talk about 3 different studies that have come out in the last few weeks that have really caught my eye. One of them is what we call a meta-analysis. That is, it's a study of a whole lot of studies. This is looking at the global prevalence of depressive and anxiety symptoms in children and adolescents during COVID-19 from around the world. Second one that we're going to look at considers ADHD and being the youngest in the class and how that seems to relate to long-term outcomes in kids. And the third one, I'm excited to talk about this one very much, talking about the importance of enjoying school and what that does for kids' grades. So, Kylie, where should we start? Are you happy to go in that order or do you want to mix it up?
Always in the beginning. That's the best place to start.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. This one is looking now, for the last couple of weeks, we've been going really, really deep on what we can do about the reality that study after study after study has pointed to COVID-19 and specifically lockdowns and government restrictions having there's no way to, I've got to be a sledgehammer about this, an absolutely devastating impact on the mental health of our communities, and our children are not escaping this. In fact, they're being significantly affected. This study, meta-analysis, so we're looking at 29 studies, nearly 81,000 young people.
So what did they actually find in relation to depression and anxiety in our children?
25.2% of children and teens were clinically evaluated as having depression, and 20.5% of children and adolescents were clinically evaluated as having anxiety.
So it's about 1 in 4.
Yeah, 1 in 4 to 1 in 5. Now, in Australia, we've got data that suggests that that's pretty much bang on, maybe even here in Australia a little bit higher. And that's because, again, the lockdowns, particularly for Victoria, but increasingly now for New South Wales and the ACT, the lockdowns are having an undeniable impact on how children are coping, and the data is telling us that they're not coping well. In fact, these researchers said the prevalence of depression and anxiety symptoms during COVID-19 have doubled compared with pre-pandemic estimates. And in Australia, we know that adolescents, we had about 15% of them that were already pre-pandemic showing up with anxiety. We're pretty confident now that that's somewhere closer to 25%, maybe even getting a little higher than that. We are talking just staggering. I mean, I can't believe that we're talking about these kinds of numbers. And I think that this is a really big risk for governments to be aware of, because the long-term impact of this could be significant.
So what can parents do?
Well, we've talked about this extensively. If you were to go back to listen to our podcasts from last week, where we spent an entire week talking about what we can do, that would probably be the best thing. But the very brief summary: make sure that the kids aren't retreating to their rooms too much. Make sure that they're getting outside time. Nature is fuel for the soul. Make sure that they're exercising, moving their bodies, and not just slumped on the couch all day, every day. Make sure that they're connecting with people that they love in whatever way you can. And if it can be face-to-face, that would be ideal. Just make sure that you keep it legal. They're probably the main things. If they've got an interest, ensure that they have the opportunity to pursue that interest. I could keep on going, but I think you get the picture.
Do you think that things will improve once lockdowns shift and lift?
I like the way you said that. I don't know. And I don't think that anybody can really tell. Here's what I know. At the moment, our older teens in particular are missing out on all of the significant life events that they would typically be involved in. Lockdowns have meant, I mean, can you imagine being in New South Wales, ACT, Victoria, and not being able to do your end of year 12 exams and having the disruption there? They've missed out on formals. They've missed out on coming of age celebrations. They've missed out on birthdays. They've missed out on being able to say goodbye to their friends the way a school year should end. Now, they may not have completely missed out, because we know that Andrews and Berejiklian are talking about changing the kids' experience and access of school, but they're certainly not having what everybody has historically had with the wonderful experiences there. And there is a grieving process that's associated with that. I think that they're missing out on closure. And that's a really big deal. But they're also looking at an uncertain future with no idea where this is going to go. Will they get over it? I think most of them probably will, but we really don't have an answer for it. Most children who have experienced elevated mental health symptoms, I think that for many of them it will resolve and they'll just get on with life. But there's going to be a group of children for whom that isn't the case. And they're going to be on a trajectory that I think we could probably call challenging, to say the least. And there's another group of children who already had mental health difficulties pre-pandemic, and they're probably going to struggle long-term because the pandemic has exacerbated and accelerated what they were experiencing.
We'll look at another study after the break.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
For a happier family, try a Happy Families membership, because a happy family doesn't just happen. Details at happyfamilies.com.au.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today I'm letting you geek out. It's the doctor's desk. We've talked about COVID and the impact that it's having on our children with depression and anxiety, numbers rising.
Yeah.
And now we're going to talk about ADHD and our children who are young for their age.
So a few weeks ago in a recent doctor's desk, we talked about how there's a number of studies from around the world, including here in Australia, that indicate that children who are the youngest in their cohort tend to be more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. Well, some researchers from Sweden have decided to try to work out whether or not there are any long-term negative outcomes from being the youngest in the cohort or being diagnosed with ADHD, particularly when you're the youngest in the cohort. And this is really fascinating research. It's also kind of provocative, because any conversation around ADHD and any suggestion that it's anything other than a neurological disorder can really irritate and upset a lot of people. So we're not trying to be provocative. We're simply reporting on what the science is showing. These researchers got a really nice large sample of Swedish kids. They compared the children who were born in January and February of the year with those born in November and December. So they're essentially saying, if you're in grade 3 and you're a January, February child, that means that you're pretty much 10 to 12 months older than the kids that were born in November, December. Therefore, youngest versus oldest. Let's have a look at what's going on here. Of the total of 300,000 kids, around about 6,500 had an ADHD diagnosis. And what they did was they basically looked at how those children were going when they were little. Then they had a look at them aged between 15 and 23, and they were having a look at whether or not they were doing well at school, whether or not they were involved with substance use disorder, which is a pretty high threshold, right? We're not just talking about whether they were using alcohol and other drugs. We're talking about kids that have got a disorder associated with substance use. They also looked at criminality and depression. And the results are fairly complicated, but let me distill it into the simplest possible terms. Essentially, kids that were young but didn't have ADHD, that is, the kids that were younger in the cohort but they never ended up having an ADHD diagnosis, just because they were the youngest, it was associated with greater risk of depression, greater substance use disorder, and lower educational achievement, which I think is fascinating. And again, not that being the youngest causes these things. There's plenty of people who are young in their cohort that don't go on to have substance use disorder. They still do very, very well at school, and they don't end up with depression. But these things are associated.
It's interesting as you're talking, like I'm thinking about one of our children. She is the youngest in her class by a long shot. And in the very early days, she held her own.
Yeah, and everyone said, she's ready, push her into school. She's absolutely ready for this.
But what we're noticing now as she progresses is she's just a little bit younger than the other kids.
The maturity level isn't there anymore.
It really is. And it's having an impact. And I think about the experiences that I had, and that desire to fit in and kind of be a part of the crowd. And when you don't fit in because your maturity level isn't there, then you've got to work harder to do it. And
it's tiring. It's so hard, and you just know you're not the same.
And you're thinking of, coming of age and wanting to fit in, and this idea that substance abuse and use increases may have an impact.
Well, they're trying to be like everyone else, perhaps. And research does show that the earlier you start using these kinds of substances, the more likely it is that it'll be problematic. So that 1 year difference could actually be really important in that particular conversation. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. I'm so glad that you're enjoying this.
I didn't say I was enjoying it.
You said it was
interesting.
Well, that's a proxy for enjoyment, I'm going to say. The children with ADHD they also experienced an increased risk of substance use disorder, but that's typical for children with ADHD anyway, because they're more likely to be impulsive, they're more likely to take risks, and they also experienced lower educational achievement. We've known this for a long time, but here's the thing. The kids with ADHD weren't more likely to have depression or criminal behaviour. And so it seems that children with ADHD diagnoses can actually still grow up without any worries about depression. They'll probably struggle at school, but we've always known that they will, and they may struggle with some risk-taking. But compared to the kids that were just young for their age group, young for their cohort, they were the ones that seemed to struggle a little bit more. When we look at this data, the ADHD kids are actually doing well relative to the ones that are just the youngest in the cohort.
Wow. That's really interesting. But I'm wondering how that helps mums and dads.
Yeah, the average mum or dad. Okay, so basically what it's saying is what I think that all of this combined with all of the other research on the topic really says that children should not be pushed into school at a young age. We need to be having really intelligent conversations about how old children should be, what the developmental milestones are that they need to hit before they're ready for school, before the academic learning, before the educational pressure that comes on them. We need to be talking about how we can make those early school years much, much, much more enjoyable and take the pressure off. I think later school starts are the way we should be going.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that really is a wonderful segue into our last study of the day.
I see how I didn't even mean to do that. So this one comes out of the UK. It's associations between school enjoyment at age 6 and later educational achievement.
This is kind of one that actually breaks my heart a little bit, because when you look at a toddler and then a preschooler and you look at the way they are just wired to learn, and they just love discovering.
Lights them up.
It's so amazing to watch. And then you watch what happens over the first couple of years of school, generally speaking. And all of a sudden our kids' curiosity gets squashed because they just get boxed in.
Yeah. Well, this is what the researchers found. They were looking at what they basically said is we know that there's a whole range of factors that affect the quality of education and how well people do at school, how well our children do at school. But one thing that's never really been researched before is how much children enjoy being at school. which I thought's fascinating. I couldn't believe that we've never looked at school enjoyment. Anyway, nice big sample of about 12,000 kids. And what they found was that students' school enjoyment at age 6 was very strongly associated with later achievement at age 16 when they were looking at the compulsory UK exams. So basically, the kids that had more fun, the kids that liked being at school when they were just 6 years old, did significantly better, as much as 3 grade levels higher when they were 16, 10 years later, just because school was fun when they were little. Well, at least that's one of the associations. Now, they cancelled out in the statistics. They looked at family background. They looked at cognitive ability. They looked at the amount of money that the family had, whether socioeconomics could have something to do with it. And what they basically said is the kids do better when they have fun. Oh, some other things that were really interesting. Girls reported enjoying school twice as often, twice as much as boys did. But essentially what this is saying, if I was to summarize it in really simple terms, even after you control for intelligence, even after you control for socioeconomic background and all that kind of thing, students who enjoy school at age 6 earn higher standardized test scores at 16. And as an extension of that, research tells us that teachers are the ones who really set the tone for intrinsic motivation, because students who like their teachers are 9 times more likely to enjoy school. How did you go at school?
Well, I can tell you right now, the teachers that I loved, I did really well in the subjects. And we watched that in our home. We've got amazingly talented and intelligent children, and the subjects where they don't get on with their teachers, they just don't do well.
Fascinating stuff. Now, this does not mean that if your children are happy at school at age 6 that they're going to absolutely be guaranteed to do better. It just means that on average, what we usually see is a positive relationship between these two things. And I think that it's fascinating. Once again, we want to encourage kids to have great relationships with their teachers, because if they do, they're 9 times more likely to enjoy school. And if they enjoy school at age 6, they're significantly more likely to do well on those standardized test scores at age 16, even after we control for all of the other factors that could contribute to it. That is the doctor's desk for this week.
I want to say I'm looking forward to the next one in 4 weeks' time, but
Heck yes. Yes, you are. You enjoyed that.
I'm grateful that there's 4 weeks break.
Do you know I enjoyed that?
It hurts my head.
Because you like me. And because you like me, you enjoy what we get to do. You like me, and it was 9 times more enjoyable.
9
times more enjoyable than a regular podcast.
Wow.
We hope that you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please leave us a rating and review. It's your ratings, your reviews that help other people to find out about the podcast and make their families happier. We received just the most delightful rating and review from somebody whose Apple name is "Couldn't Do This Without You." 5 stars. The title of this review was "Soothes and Realigns Me." Listening to Justin and Kylie each day both soothes and realigns me. Being a parent of 2 children under 3, a business owner, and a full-time emergency service worker, I have numerous stresses in my life. Each day, as I sit in my car and listen to this podcast, it reminds me that while my life is busy and I face challenges on a daily basis, my main purpose in life is to provide a warm, compassionate, safe and nurturing environment for my girls to grow in. So, no matter what else has occurred in my day, Justin and Kylie realign me daily to what is truly important, and they help my wife and I to be better parents and better people. Thank you. Wow.
I feel realigned.
I feel soothed. What a wonderful, wonderful, kind message. We really appreciate Couldn't Do This Without You for your 5-star rating and review. Like I said, you can leave them on Apple Podcasts. Hey, we've got 461 ratings. Wouldn't it be amazing to get to 500? Will you help us get there? Can we see if we can get 40 this week? That would be phenomenal. Please do if you haven't done it already. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. And if you'd like more info about making your family happier, whether it's for free or via our Happy Families memberships, check out happyfamilies.com.au.